Okay, so on to HTML5 Canvas. Canvas is a new element within the specification of HTML that allows you to draw two-dimensional vector graphics. So this is really kind of the replacement for Flash that they wanted to build into all browsers standard. Flash was, just in case if you didn't know, Flash was originally a Macromedia and then bought up by Adobe technology for drawing 2D vector graphics. It was huge for video games for a really long time. The reason that it was so popular was because by forcing people to, well, not forcing, but by requiring people to download the Flash player to play the Flash movies, they were ensuring a very reliable deployment model. They were ensuring a very reliable environment for their programs to run in, just like Apple does with their iPhone, just like console systems do, like Xboxes and PlayStations. Let's see what else. Just like Java does with its Java runtime environment. So Flash was doing the same thing with its Flash player. So kind of, as a way of trying to get that type of fidelity and quality without needing the actual Flash player, they came up with HTML5 Canvas. So they want all browsers to be able to conform to this and be able to hopefully achieve some of the, at least almost the fidelity of Flash. Just to cut to the chase a little bit, Canvas is not yet to the point where it performs like Flash, at least in my opinion. It almost looks that good sometimes. It doesn't really, it can't really perform as well as Flash does everywhere, simply because of the heavy weight of the Flash player was just built to really endure a lot of memory and a lot of strain, and browsers aren't really always configured or meant for that purpose. So it's a little bit more lightweight, not quite as heavy duty as Flash, but it's definitely getting there. I did a little bit of research. I think I was on an R&D project about 3 years ago, and we were comparing the abilities of Canvas to do what Flash did, and it wasn't really close at that time, but I think it's come further since then. Anyway, I'm going to copy and paste my HTML5 Canvas folder from my repository in GitHub so that I can change it without messing anything up. So I have 3 example folders here in which I wrote some code for you, and I'm going to go through all 3 of them because I think armed with some of these examples, you'll be able to go forward and probably write your own little video game, which is really good, really cool. I want you guys to be able to do that. I'll just say ahead of time that I think it's easier to write games in Flash, a lot easier than HTML5, a lot faster than Canvas. That's just my opinion. Some people, everybody has their own opinion of when it's easier to use what, but for me, it was a lot easier. I taught a game programming class in Flash, and it was just really, I felt like the students just learned it really, really fast, and it was very easy for them. Canvas seems to be a little harder of a learning curve for new students. Maybe I just had bad experiences, but so far it seems to me like Flash might have been a little easier, but you can be the judge yourself if you think this is hard or not. So notice, I'm not doing a whole lot of files here. I just have some JavaScript, and there's not going to be very much markup here at all. So this is it. So here's our canvas element, and the canvas is basically the equivalent of the markup line in Flash where you would embed the Flash movie. So the canvas is an element on the screen that says I'm 600 wide, 600 high, and I am going to be the canvas, and just go ahead and draw on me. So if you imagine it literally like a canvas that somebody is painting on, because when you're doing 2D graphics, you're really just painting, and then calling the paint method over and over and over again, and the effect is you get like an animation. So I have a canvas, 600 by 600. That's all there is to it. The rest is I'm just importing jQuery just for convenience, and then my script file. So the very last thing that's going to happen is going to import my script file, and everything that we're going to be talking about is in here, nothing else. Okay, so let's see, where should I start? I'll start at the top. So you'll notice a kind of a old theme here where I'm creating myself a main object because I like to scope everything like a good programmer. I don't like things just floating around that are unscoped or nebulously, ambiguously scoped. So it's nice to have some, very kind of predictable and obvious scoping. So I have this main scope, and so this is the canvas. That's the object that is the most important object that is going to kind of do everything. And this shouldn't look very very strange to you. I probably should use jQuery for that, but whatever. Document.get element by ad my canvas. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and change that. I can say $. Well, I'm not gonna change it because then I have to re-upload my GitHub, and I'm too lazy. So anyway, this will grab that element and put it in the canvas variable. So canvas is a predefined object. So that means that it has a whole bunch of methods on it that were defined by the specification. So get context is one of those methods. So if I take my canvas object that I just got and just pluck it right off the screen, and off of that object I say get context, and I pass as a parameter 2D, that's going to give me back the context object, and I'm storing that in another variable called main.context. You can store these in any variables you want, but I like main.canvas and main.context. So you're going to need the canvas and the context to do pretty much everything in Canvas. So all your drawing is going to be done with one of these two objects. So the next thing that I always do in my Canvas applications is I create a globally scoped mx and my variable just to keep track of where my mouse is. So we can use these for anything from where is the mouse currently, or if I clicked the mouse, where did you click? So I just like to have these variables to store an xy coordinate if I need it. From there, I think I'm going to let's go down to the bottom. I think so. This is what happens when the document loads. So the very first line of code, all these functions are going to get defined, but nothing is going to actually happen until the document's ready. So the document's ready, and it's going to say main.animate. So that's all that happens. So the page loads and it calls animate. So what is animate? Go up here and I look at it. So this is a function that I've defined, and here is where we get down into the nitty-gritty of how Canvas works. So I grab onto my context and I call clear rect. The first two parameters are xy coordinates, and if you forget the parameters and stuff, you can I'm sure we can Google the API for Canvas, HTML5 Canvas API. So clear rect. There it is. So for any one of these methods that you're looking at, you could always come here to the API and check out how it works. There we go. XY width height. That's better. So we see XY width height just like the parameter list here shows. So yes, the APIs are all documented. But you can kind of get the gist of it just by looking at this code. So this clears everything starting at 0, 0. And you can ask the canvas for its total width and ask the canvas for its total height. This basically clears the whole screen. So remember, this is inside of the animate function. So now there's a fill style on the context, and I just give it a color. So the fill style is red. And then I'm going to call fill rect from 0, 0. So that's x0, y0. So that's the origin at the upper left-hand corner. And the width is going to be 150, and the height is going to be 75. So I'm not even going to go any further. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to comment that out. Alright, so everything in there, commented out, save that. The only thing else is at the end of the animate function, and you're just going to have to kind of remember this because it's actually a little bit hard to explain, and you probably will have a hard time understanding it because it's hard for me to understand too, to be honest. But there's basically the window in HTML and JavaScript in the DOM basically has this request anim frame function that you have to call at the end of your animate function. What that's going to do, you really just want to copy and paste this function. Don't worry too much about how this works. The only part you might want to take note of is that these numbers here kind of control how fast it's going to repaint, but I think that if you just use these numbers here, it'll be fine for almost anything that you want to do. So just kind of copy and paste this function for now, and this just makes sure that it works in all the different browsers. There's a bunch of different types of ways to request the animation frame depending on what browser you're in. So as long as you have this function there, and then at the end of your animate you call this, and notice it's going to invoke the animate function again. So what it amounts to is this keeps repeating forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So this is a gigantic loop that never stops. Since main animate calls itself, it's going to just keep going forever. So kind of, this is, I'll just do this for a second. This right here, you're pretty much going to want that stuff no matter what. And then all of your code that you're going to put at each interval of paint is going to go right here. Right here. So there I'm going to paste back what I just took. I'll just cut that out for a second. So all it's going to do is going to clear the screen, it's going to set the fill style to red, and then it's going to draw a rectangle, and it's just going to keep doing that forever. And it's going to look like it's not doing much, but it's actually going to be painting this red rectangle over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So come back here, and now I'm also going to draw a circle. So the way you do a circle is you tell the context to begin a path, and then you define an arc, and we can look at the parameters of that in the API. Html5 Canvas API. Let's see, we have our arc. There it is. So the parameters for arc are x, y, radius, angle in radians, ending angle in radians, and counterclockwise, true or false. And I guess I don't have clockwise or counterclockwise because it doesn't matter. So I defined an arc, and then stroke means color it in, and now I should have a circle. What did I do wrong? Unexpected token star. Good debugging exercise. Oh. Don't know how to comment things apparently. Just to be safe, I'll just cut it all out. So there's my circle, and there's my rectangle. And you still can't obviously tell that it's constantly repainting things, but now I'm going to prove to you that it is. So with this third thing, I'm going to say set the font, and then I'm going to tell the context fill text. This is another method, and the parameters are, the first parameter just looks like a string, so that's one big string, and then just an XY coordinate. So it's going to print that string. Maybe it'll look better like this. A little more readable like this, perhaps. I don't know. That looks fine to me. I liked it the other way, but I'll just do that just to show you. So now you can see that it's always painting the this text here according to the current XY values. So it's actually painting really, really fast. So even if I move fast, you can see the numbers are changing really quickly. So this function here, animate, is getting called quickly many times. And so I guess I should probably tell you one last thing, and that's this method here. That's the last thing we didn't talk about. This is the guy that's keeping track of the mouse moving and setting those coordinates that I'm using in the text here. So I'm using main mx and main my, those two variables that I talked about at the beginning. But how are those getting set? Well, I took mouse.canvas.onMove, which is an event, and I basically gave it an event listener to say, every time the mouse moves, I'm going to, hold on to those values and store them in mx and my to figure out where the mouse is. So again, you can kind of, just take a look at that, see how it works. You can see that there is an offset x, an offset y, layer x, and a layer Y inside the event, and you can just kind of pluck out those values and use them to calculate the X and Y value with some simple geometry. So this is kind of an example that you can use to get started making a simple video game. So that's that. Those are the basics: how to draw rectangles, how to draw circles, and how to draw text, some words. So that's the first example. Second example gets a little more data oriented, and this is important because we're going to be, we're going to need to do something like this in our lab. So it doesn't look very awesome. There's 3 squares on the screen. Let's look into the code. So this is the same. We still have the canvas and the context to draw things. I stored a couple colors and variables. That's not very exciting. But now I have a mouse pressed equals false. Okay. So now this, you should recognize this as a class definition. So I'm saying, I'm creating a class called box so that I can instantiate objects of type box. And I'm saying, every box has an x-coordinate, a y-coordinate, a width, and a height. I'm taking those constructor parameters and I'm setting member variables x, y, width, and height, just like we did in the JavaScript object-oriented programming lab. And then also I'm putting a member method or instance method on the box class, and I'm saying is selected. So I can invoke, I can tell any box object, dot is selected, and get back a true or a false. So the first part is, it just wants to check to see if the mouse is pressed. So what that says to me is the box is only selected if I'm holding down the mouse. Okay, so I don't know how the mouse pressed works yet because we didn't get there yet, but trusting that that variable will always be correct, that says if I don't have the mouse pressed down, get out of here, and we're not selected. So you have to have the mouse pressed in order to select one of the boxes. This stuff here is just really simple geometry. So if the x coordinate of the mouse is within the x axis coordinates. So basically we want to see, is the mouse inside of the box going left and right? We want to make sure that it's not to the left of the x coordinate. We make sure it's not to the right of the far right of the box. Well, what is the far right of the box? If you think about it, the x coordinate of the box plus the width of the box is the right side of the box. So this here says I want to make sure that so how can I read this without sounding stupid? So if the x coordinate of the mouse is greater than the x coordinate of the box, that means I'm further to the right than the left side of the box. And also, my mouse coordinate has to be to the left of the right side of the box. So if I'm to the right of the left side of the box, and I'm to the left of the right side of the box, and that must mean that I'm inside of the box, at least horizontally. And if you just flip everything around to use y instead, it does the same thing vertically. So this checks to make sure that I'm within, on the x-axis, the box. This checks to make sure I'm within the box vertically, and if both of them are true, which I'm returning, then my mouse is inside of the rectangle. So a little bit of thinking about geometry, not too much. This is like the most complicated thing we do, saying, oh, the right side of the box is its x-coordinate plus its width. So, it's not really very complicated. So we can tell if our mouse is inside of the region of the box just by doing that geometry. So now I can create boxes that have an x, a y, a width, a height, and they can tell me if the mouse is currently inside of them. So that's pretty good start for creating a video game or any little gadget that you want to do. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm creating an array of boxes. So I create 3 boxes. Obviously, you probably remember a few seconds ago I showed you on the screen there were 3 boxes. So I'm creating 3 boxes, and each one of them has a different xy coordinate and size. So this one's at 1010 and is small. This one's at 150, 100 and is a little bigger. And this one's at 300, 300 and is 250 pixels high and wide. So these are 3 boxes inside of the array, and the array is called boxes. Alright, this is the same exact function we had before, just to keep track of the mouse coordinate. So this function, you can copy and paste that into your code. I don't care if you use that exactly like it is. That will keep track of where the X and Y coordinate is on the screen, or where the mouse coordinate currently is. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom for a second just to show you something. So right after the animate, I bound up these two event listeners. So I told the canvas I want to add an event listener to the mouse up event, and I want to add an event listener to the mouse down event. And you notice that I just bound them to these functions that I have, mouse up and mouse down. So that's these two here, main mouse up, main mouse down. So these are just my own functions, but these things are built in. So I took those mouse up and mouse down events, everything from here over, all that stuff right there is built in. So that's part of the API, add event listener mouse up. So all I did was I said, anytime they click the mouse, I want it to fire my own function, this guy, and anytime they release the mouse, I want it to fire my own function, that guy. So that will basically fire these functions and set mouse. I'm writing this code to set mouse press to false or mouse press to true. So that's how, I just wanted to tell you how I have this variable working here. And you can do anything you want in these functions. You can write any code you want in there. I just wanted to keep it simple for now and just set this variable to true or false. But for your program or your game or whatever you're going to write, you can change any of this code. So I have an array of boxes, and I have a variable that tells me whether or not my mouse is pressed, and that's all I have. There's nothing else to this program. So then I go to my animate function, which is the last thing. In the animate function, it still starts with the same line of code to clear the, get rid of everything before I paint. So you want to clear the entire screen before you paint again, and then it's going to animate again at the end. So this basically is all my whole program is doing. So it's pretty simple. I'm looping through the boxes. I say go through for every box, and then I pull the box out. So var box equals main boxes sub I. So recall that this is my array of boxes from right here. And so now this is a little interesting. I set my fill style to a conditional, and now I'm calling, hey box, are you selected? So remember, we did this before. We can say the box can figure out if it's selected or not. The mouse has to be pressed, and it has to be within the coordinates of, within the region of the rectangle. And I remember I had these two colors defined up at the top, right there, standard color and highlight color. So here I'm actually setting my fill style to either highlight or standard based on whether or not my mouse is pressed and I'm within the region of the rectangle. And then here, I'm actually drawing the boxes, and look how easy it is. I just say fill rect, starting at the, as the x coordinate, I give it the x coordinate of the box. As the y coordinate of the box. As the width the box. So you get the point. So I'm really only doing two things. I'm saying, for each box, I'm saying choose a color and draw it. That's pretty much it. That's the whole program, is these two lines of code. So just based on, some good object-oriented programming, I'm able to kind of get this functionality out of 2 lines of code. And what I get is 3 boxes where each one of them, if I click on them, it'll light up red. So if I click anywhere else, nothing happens. But if I click on the box, then it'll light up. So that's certainly the beginnings of some really simple video game. And then I thought, I was almost going to stop at this, because really, at this point, you should be armed to the teeth, with stuff to make a video game, and I'm all about making video games. So, show me how to make some boxes and some circles and some text on the screen, and wire up some simple events, and I'm ready to go. But I thought I'll take it one step further. What if they want to draw some sprites on the screen, some images? So with example 3, let's see, what did I do? I think I added one picture, so it's just check mark. It's a really big check mark, but what I did was I really gutted this thing. I got rid of almost everything. So I still have animate, I still have that thing, and here's my animate function. So let's just start with the animate function and see what it does. So all I have is a for loop, it goes through my boxes. Now it's a little different. So instead of calling draw rect and passing the coordinates of the box, it says get the box and call a function called draw as image, and it passes this main.checker image or checkmark image as a parameter. So before we look at the method, let's figure out what the heck this checkmark image thing is. So if I scroll up to the top, you see right here at the very beginning, quite simply, I created a variable, an object called checkmark image, and said equals new image. And then I set its source property to the name of the image. So, this is just one image. You can create an array of images, get crazy, with your programming skills, but this is how you load up one image. And so I took that image, so literally that is an image, and I passed it to, for each box, I said, hey box, take this image and draw as image. Well, what does draw as image mean? So I still have my boxes here that look the same. The only difference is I gutted it and I replaced the function with draw as image. It takes an image, and what does it do with it? So this is another method on the API. Might as well Google it since we've been doing it. Html5 Canvas Api, draw image. So there's our draw image method. And give me some parameters. So img, let's see what I did here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those are the 5 that I used. The image itself, sx, sy, swidth, sheight. Clipping. I guess I just used these 4. X, Y, width, and height. Not really sure how it's doing that with optional parameters that are not at the end of the method. Usually optional parameters are the last ones. Anyway, so image x, y, width, height, and literally that's going to make all of the, if I tell a box draws image, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to find the context, I'm going to draw this image at this x coordinate, this y coordinate with this width and this height. So this is really, really simple. So it's able to, draw those images with those specified positions and sizes. So, now we can do more than draw shapes and text on the screen and vector graphics, but we can also kind of load sprites or 2D images and put those on the screen too. And just in case it didn't click, let's see this. I'm going to do this. Just in case you didn't get the idea, I'm going to. I'll get rid of all these boxes except I'll get rid of the big box. No, I'll leave the middle one. Why not the middle one? Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so there's one check mark. And instead of drawing it at its current x coordinate and current y coordinate, I'm going to draw it at, oh, you know what, I took out the mouse code. It's okay, I can do it for my other example. I'll go back to example 2. You know what, even example 1 is probably the easiest. So I want to, if anything that I draw at all, if I want to move it around, all I have to do is change the way I'm drawing it to coincide with the mouse coordinates so that you get animation for, where you're moving the mouse. So for example, here, I always know what my mouse x and y coordinates are. So instead of drawing this rectangle at 0, 0, I could draw it at main.mx, main.my. So now wherever I move my mouse, that rectangle is going to follow along. So give me some nice animation that's almost as smooth as Flash. So that's kind of cool. So, hopefully armed with these few very small starting points, you're kind of ready to start doing some video game stuff. All it takes is really these this simple API and a little bit of programming. So again, sorry, HTML5 Canvas API. So just use the Canvas reference just in case you get confused about any of these methods. But really, you should be able to use nothing but the code that I gave you and literally write your own video game. So it's pretty easy. 2D graphics in general is usually very easy once you learn the basics of drawing simple shapes. The most complicated thing you usually ever have to do is deal with z coordinates, layering, and maybe some gradients here and there. But for the most part, it's pretty easy as long as you understand simple object-oriented programming, like we were doing here in example 2. So for the assignment, I'm going to ask you to just do something similar to this. I'll give you some specifications that I want you to kind of meet, and the main thing that I want to accomplish in this is tying in your JavaScript skills. I'm not that concerned with Canvas itself. This is the majority of what you're going to be changing is what you're animating, but I really I want to see you do this kind of thing where you're making a nice kind of a good object-oriented design with the classes and the objects that you're creating, and kind of lining those up with what it is that you're actually drawing. Because honestly, like I said at the beginning of the class, JavaScript is kind of the core skill of front-end web development. It comes back over and over and over again, no matter what you're doing, whether it be jQuery, Angular, or almost anything that you want to do. The core skill is JavaScript. So again, the focus of this assignment is pretty much JavaScript, and I'll outline the details of it in the assignment description itself. But just off the top of my head right now, I really want to focus on the code that's being executed continually inside of your animation should really be very intuitive and make sense along with the structure of your object graph or the design of your classes. So it'll make a little more sense once I actually specify. I'll give you the specifications for the assignment, but long story short is this is more about your JavaScript skills than it is about understanding all the different aspects of Canvas. Even me, I had to, just to write this example, I had to open up W3 Schools and remember all of these function names and how they worked. So that's not really the important part. The important part is keeping your object-oriented programming strong, and being able to write this JavaScript without getting confused. Because if you can't, if you're getting confused by the JavaScript, then getting into the way all these methods work together is just going to kill you. So you really need to have your JS down, and hopefully this will just be another practice assignment for us in JavaScript.